Welcome to this solo episode of the Aligned Founder podcast titled, Why Do I Constantly Compare Myself to Others? And in this special episode coming live from Bali, the theme of the podcast is going to be about how entrepreneurs and founders tend to create this hierarchy of external validation and then spend their lives comparing themselves to others in this kind of secret internal competition that they create in their minds. So if you are a founder or an entrepreneur who always finds yourself needing to be better and to do more and comparing yourself to others in all areas of life, and then constantly pushing yourself past the point that actually you need to or feels comfortable, even after achieving probably a good level of financial success that you never need to think about earning money anymore, but you still can't turn it off and you still find that these thoughts and these behaviors keep driving you forward, then this episode is most definitely for you. So we are going to explore, first of all, what is what I call the totem pole of power, and what are the benefits of living on this totem pole and some of the challenges or problems that come from living on this totem pole of, you could say, external validation. We're going to look at where is the origin of this external validation pattern and what are some points of resistance that people might have that make them not want to change living on this totem pole. And then finally, if it is something that you do want to move past deep down, then some solutions and some actionable steps that you can take in order to rid yourself of this comparison game once and for all. So just a note before we dive in, this topic is more specific to my experience as a man and my experience of working with more male founders. It can apply also to females and to women, but I find this really lands quite well for men, and it was a big part of my life. If you are a woman, you may still receive a lot of benefit from this. You may understand others more in your life as a result, and maybe some of them apply also to you. But for sure, if you're a guy entrepreneur and you find yourself pushing yourself and comparing yourself all the time, this should definitely resonate. So we're going to start first of all by defining what is the pattern. So this concept of constant comparison is this idea of basically always looking outside of ourselves and having this narrative of judging ourselves against others. So we're constantly measuring our value and worth compared to that of others. So if we're in an environment where we deem those around us to be maybe not so successful or not really at a high level of, monetary worth, or maybe they don't have much respect, or they're just kind of more basic people, then we don't find ourselves comparing ourselves that much, or we may even look down on them a little bit. Okay. And then above us on the totem pole, we got people who we may perceive as being more successful, more rich, more respected, also maybe like bigger, or more manly in some way, or at least how we might have deemed manly to be. So what that means is that in the presence of these people that we put above us on this totem pole, we feel not enough. We don't feel good enough. And that is typically coming from our earlier experience in life, which we're going to come to later. But basically, our early experiences in life are creating this planted seed inside of us where we feel the need to drive in our life to always become the best, to not even just the best, but like on another planet the best, so that we can never be judged and go back down to that place of unworthiness and feeling not good about ourselves that we maybe experienced at some point in our life. So some of the benefits of being on this totem pole of comparison is that it's healthy to have a degree of competition where we're comparing ourselves to others, where we're consistently using the motivation of those around us to drive us up and forward so that we can achieve things and succeed and create something great in the world. And it's kind of a superpower in a way, because your need to be on top is what often drives you to achieve a level of success that's unusual or unnatural for the average person. And if you found that you've pushed hard for many years, you may have achieved a lot of great things. You may have got a lot of the things you wanted in life, or you believed you wanted, this financial freedom, this feeling of being able to do whatever you want, to not have a boss, and to create the life you want also for your family. These are all great things. And at that point of your career and your journey, pushing hard is justified and it rationally makes sense. It's like a good thing. Yeah, we get money, we get a good life, freedom. It actually serves you at that point. So, early on in our journey, in the entrepreneurial journey, this constant comparison and this internal feeling of like, I need to push myself harder and do more to be the best can be a good thing. We can really leverage that. Now, the first problem arises when we climb ourselves up this totem pole, we achieve this level of success, but we realize then that we can't switch it off. So what's basically happened is we're stuck in a never-ending loop of comparison and competition with others that we deem as a threat in all areas of life. So the belief might be when I make 1 million, 10 million, 100 million, then I'll be good. Then I can slow down, then it's all gonna be good. And we will justify and rationalize that till the cows come home. But what we realize usually is once we make the 20 million, there's going to be some guy above us still on the totem pole looking down going, oh, look at the cute little 20 million. And if you make the 200 million, then Jeff Bezos is going to be sitting there in your mind at least going, oh, look at this little guy. Who does he think he is, a small fish? So we realize at a certain point rationally and cognitively that this is no longer serving us, that we have more than we ever need. And yet we can't switch it off. And this starts to impact our quality of life, even though we know that we don't need to do it anymore. So this is kind of the loop that we're stuck in. But before that, I want to also describe a second issue or problem that arises from this constant comparison loop on this totem pole of power, as I like to call it. So not only does this apply to business success and comparing yourself to, oh, they had this revenue last year, they had a big exit, this guy is worth this much money, but we can also compare ourselves in other areas of life as well, just like physical appearance. Typically, when founders make a good amount of money and they realize that that didn't give them the happiness and freedom that they really wanted, they turn their attention to the next best thing, which is their fitness. They say, okay, I disregarded my health and fitness for many years in order to make money. Now I'm going to get a 6-pack and 5% body fat, and they hire the best personal trainer, they go to the gym. However, the issue is they're going to go to a gym where there's been a guy who's been working out for 20 years every day, and they're going to compare themselves to that guy in the gym or even multiple guys in the gym. So in our minds, of course, we'll start to turn around and create excuses as to why they're higher than us. We'll say, oh, he's probably taking steroids, he's taking testosterone supplements, maybe he's got a small penis, whatever we would use to try and bring them down in our minds so we can feel better about ourselves. So what's happened is we've taken this insatiable drive to be at the top of the totem pole in a business context, which was the primary thing we kind of determined as like, okay, this is going to make me feel free and happy and good enough, worthy ultimately. And it didn't really work. So we then just transfer it into the next available area, which is basically fitness and health. Reaching the 5% body fat is going to give you about as much long-term satisfaction as the big exit and all the money gave you. It's not really going to work, let's be honest. So, and again, I know maybe cognitively that's already landed for you, but if you're still doing it and still living in that way and forcing yourself to go to the gym at times when, really it actually isn't serving you anymore and you need to just rest or maybe just enjoy life a bit more, be with your family, and you're just pushing yourself, then this is when we can switch the pattern off and ultimately we're not free. It's dictating our lives. Just like there's always going to be a Jeff Bezos, there's always going to be a Mr. Olympia or some guy that's like this crazy jacked dude, and you're never going to beat him. Let's be honest. Like, even if you're in the top 5 to even 2% of physiques in the entire world, which isn't hard these days, everyone seems, half the people are obese, but even if you're in this like top echelon of men, there's always going to be people better than you. So if you're consistently using this totem pole outside of you and validating yourself based like my worthiness is only valid if I'm at the very top of this pole, then it's not a very good way to live your life, and it's going to impact the amount of stress you have and just your enjoyment of life. The other thing that happens is when it's not just in like a physical arena or, and again, this comparing with other men, but when it happens in any area of life. So let's say you decide to start learning how to cook. If you turn around and look at like someone who's put in 10,000 hours, but you haven't even put in 10, then you're always going to feel worse off and you're always going to feel bad. So you start to cook and you're like, well, I'm not Jamie Oliver, I'm a piece of shit. Well, I'm not Jimi Hendrix, so I'm a bad person, You play five-a-side football, but you're not Cristiano Ronaldo. So again, these are almost like your brain finding excuses to reconfirm a deep question or a deep story that maybe I'm not good enough. We're placing ourselves on this totem pole, and then we're placing ourselves below other people who've, spent their whole lives maybe working on a skill, and we're then making ourselves feel bad or reaffirming a story that we believe deep down is true. Well, the ironic thing is people like Cristiano Ronaldo probably have the exact same pattern. That's probably what made him the best in the world, because he consistently was like, I'm not good enough, I need to prove myself, I need to push myself. One negative downside of this pattern is that we start to see everyone as an enemy, particularly people who are more skilled than us that we could actually learn from and we could even admire and, just feel a lot of respect for, but we actually spend our time just kind of treating them like they're evil or something. We almost need to villainize them to basically externalize and project out this internal feeling of shame that it brings up inside of us, which is ultimately ours from the past that we get to look at. Basically, the trend is whether it's Jamie Oliver, Jimi Hendrix, Jeff Bezos, Cristiano Ronaldo, if you're comparing yourself to people outside of you, even that guy at the gym, then the common thread and the common theme is that you are the one judging yourself all the time. And the deeper wound inside of you is the actual issue here. It's not Jeff Bezos or any of the other guys. So we're going to talk about where exactly this comes from. And at least in my experience, I can relate to growing up in my childhood, consistently feeling like I needed to. And again, this could have just been all been created by me, but the sense that I had growing up was that whenever I wanted to do something or try to do something new, I would be wanting to gain the approval of my dad, my father, in that masculine lead role in my life. So when we're a child, we basically project this idealism of God or omnipotence onto our parents, and we say, oh my God, they are the gods of my world. Now, on that basis, if God doesn't approve of us, then we must be pretty bad. If God punishes us, then we must be a real sack of shit. So it's kind of like we take the feedback of our parents without being able to rationalize why they might be, not validating of something that we're doing, and we just assume I am bad. So an example of this, me growing up, I wanted to play football. I enjoyed playing football. For my dad, he would turn around and say, well, if you want to do it, you have to do it this way, and you have to take coaching, and you have to do lessons and buy these videos and do it this way. Go out, don't do this. So I found myself not only just being worried about the game and letting the team down, but also about letting him down. So there was a high level of stress that I obviously wasn't aware of at the time, but I know a lot of guys that can also relate to that experience of having, their dad be this kind of like, particularly in sporting arenas, that they're trying to live up to this high standard. Others, it can be education. They want to get straight A's, and if they don't, then there's this consistent anxiety. And that's not a unique situation to me. And I also know that my dad had probably even worse experience from his dad and not getting, validated or feeling unworthy from these things happen, and we get to understand where they come from. So maybe you can tune into a time that maybe you felt, or times in the past that you felt that you tried to or needed to win the approval of your dad and you maybe didn't get it, or that you constantly just tried to do more and it just didn't work and you never really felt like he validated you as his son or his daughter. So when this doesn't happen, when the God of our world does not validate us, we feel shame. Instead of it being like, oh, I did a bad thing, which is healthy shame, toxic shame is when it is basically, I am bad. Like at my core, I am wrong because God is disapproving of me. So this early stage, like it doesn't make sense, obviously, from an adult cognitive perspective, but from that child's perspective, we have this internal belief of like, I must not deserve to be good or have the same things as other people. However, what often happens with this totem pole is that people flip into the opposite. They go, I'm going to show you. I'm going to show the whole world that I am worthy. Kind of like, screw you, Dad, or screw you, God, basically. Now, a great example, a great story of this is if you've ever watched or listened to Arnold Schwarzenegger's story. He's got a great documentary on Netflix. It talks about how his dad was this very angry guy and used to beat him and his brother. What I would say is that there's this kind of split or fork in the road that happens where one person goes left, one person goes right. So in this case, we got the same childhood, we got the same father, and two different makeups of human, okay? So his brother, Arnold's brother, was subject to the same level of scrutiny, criticism, beating, all that kind of thing from the dad. So he was made to believe that he's not good enough. Now he internalized that, said, I must not be good enough. And he slumped basically into a depression, became an alcoholic, and ended up dying when he drove into a wall. I think it was 25 years old or something, because he just went down a very dark path, basically. And that's one route. And that's the people who sit in the pit for the rest of their life and say, I'm not worthy, I don't deserve love, I don't deserve to have my needs met, I'm a piece of shit, etc. Okay? And then the other side is Arnold Schwarzenegger, which is, I believe, or there's a question deep down that I am this really bad person. Tell you what, I'm going to show you and the world that I am the best, and then no one can ever make me feel that way again. So what does Arnold do? 7, 8-time Mr. Olympia champion, famous Hollywood, actor, multi-billionaire, I'm sure, governor of California. So if you've ever seen an example of like a fork in the road and someone getting this need and desire to get themselves to the top of the totem pole to prove that they are enough, there's no better example than Mr. Arnold. So bringing it back down to an everyday context, what actually happens then if we bring this down to maybe your life and maybe areas that you might find yourself comparing yourself to others? So what happens? What's the chain of events? We see a person that is better than us, okay? And in some area, they could have made more money, they could be more respected, they could be funnier, they could have a six-pack and you don't, whatever it is. Choose your event. They might be better at picking up the opposite sex. Maybe they embody certain qualities that you really would like to embody, but you haven't yet. All these different things, okay? So whatever happens, it creates an illusion that in some way you are below them or less than. And therefore, you must be unworthy. That's kind of like the deeper feelings. This reignites or brings back to life this core wound or this deep wound inside from many years ago, from when you were made to believe by your, in this case, father, that you are unworthy and that you don't deserve to have your needs met or you're not good enough, whatever it is. And you feel that pain inside or the discomfort inside. You believe that he is making you feel this. So what you'll do is you'll externalize him and make excuses to try and bring him down on the totem pole instead of sitting with your own unresolved pain from your childhood, basically. So what we're actually getting is we're getting direct cues from our environment for how valuable that we are or how valuable we believe we are as a person in response to the things we do and the things we achieve and how those things then stand in comparison with what others do and what others are achieving. So it's this complete, like, just messed up internal game that we create with the world and we're constantly playing. And even if you've reached a good level of success, you'll probably realize that you can't switch it off. Now, there is a pressure test that we can do to test this out and see maybe how far or how much of your external self-worth are you basing on this totem pole of power. So the first thing I want you to do to test this out for yourself at home is to first visualize somebody that you really see as like a nemesis, like an arch enemy, like someone that you really dislike. You're like, screw that guy. He's an asshole or she's an asshole, whatever it is. It could be someone that screwed you over in like school or university. Could be like your ex-business partner or something like this. Someone that, you know, if basically they were to turn around and now you realize that they actually had been going around talking shit about you and had actually succeeded and done a lot more than you. And now that they were like laughing at you to other people that you knew and respected in your network, the question is, how would you feel? 0 feeling, I don't feel anything, I don't really care, to 10 being like, this is absolutely unbearable, I cannot stand this pain, it's the worst thing ever, and I need to immediately jump into action to try and resolve the situation, to tear down their character, to talk to all these people and explain to them why actually I'm a good person. So if you're noticing that, just rank that on a scale of 0 to 10 right now. The second pressure test we want to do is I want you to imagine someone that you really admire or look up to. Could be like a father figure or a mentor or even a hero that you have, okay? Someone that embodies the qualities of what you would love to step into in your life, okay? Now, imagine now that this father figure is going around and is saying, I do not respect this person, I don't value them, I don't value their company, their opinion, I don't care about them. How would you feel on a scale of 0 to 10? 0 being, I wouldn't care at all, it doesn't affect me. 10 being like, it's completely unbearable, I can't stand it. Basically, if it's manageable, then, you know, you're doing okay. Maybe if you're on like a 2 or 3 to a 5, it's like, okay, there's some external self-worth, but you can still hold yourself and you're not fully, you know, getting only your self-worth from this external totem pole. However, if you're up at like an 8 to 10 and the feeling is really quite unbearable, at either this, you know, arch nemesis of yours or this father figure mentor of yours thinking that actually they basically disrespecting you, then there is some work to be done for you here, unfortunately. Because what this is really about is about reclaiming our self-worth, getting off this totem pole and basically not needing to rely on that anymore for feeling just that we're enough. So that all sounds well and good, but typically at this point, people hit a point of resistance. And that point of resistance is basically this belief or thought that like, I don't want to give up this comparison and this, you know, pushing this inner drive that I have because that's the reason I got my success. And I don't want to lose that edge. Like, even though, yeah, it sucks, you know, it's not good to be comparing myself and constantly pushing, but what if I let go of that? And then I suddenly become lazy, like just lose all my money and just sit in the sofa and I become like a failure. Like, what if the only reason I'm successful is because of this somewhat toxic pattern and it's the only thing keeping me going? That is a pretty fair concern, to be honest. to be fair with you. So it's like if you've never ever learned how to swim and you just jumped in the ocean at some point and you just started thrashing with all of your energy. It's very inefficient and it's not a good way to live or to swim. However, if I told you that you have to stop trying to do that so you can learn how to swim properly, you may not want to do that because then you might drown. So you're just going to keep, thrashing forever, basically, instead of ever really pausing and stopping to try and learn a proper swimming technique that's more efficient. So I have a message of reassurance for you if that's the case. You have at this point in your life built up skills, resources, network, and knowledge basically, and abilities that if shit really hit the fan and if things went bad, that you can really, if you need to, go back to your old ways and grind and push if you need to, okay? If things are really on the line, you know you can do it. You've come too far, you can never go back to that old place. And at this point, maybe that, inner fire was what pushed you forward, but it's also got you to learn the skills that will stop you from ever regressing. You know too much. So this is not about it being on or off forever. It's about choosing when you turn it on. And that is what's available on the other side of integrating this piece and healing these deeper pieces. It's not about suddenly you turn into a sack of shit sitting on the sofa all day. So deep down, what is the solution? The solution is to go from this external self-worth, which is basically this totem pole of power, this consistent comparison to others, to bringing it back inside job, to internal self-worth. So I have an analogy for this, and I want you to imagine that you're driving your car around in this desert, okay? And as you drive around, you see different petrol stations that you can stop at, and you can pull in and get gas. Now, what you grew up realizing, or thinking at least, is that I need to stop at the petrol station, I need to pay money. No matter how much I need to pay, I need to just get petrol. Otherwise, my car will just break down in the middle of the desert and then I'm screwed. So we will pay whatever price we need to continue to get that validation from, or the petrol in this case, the validation from the petrol stations. Now, that is the totem pole of power. That is looking outside of ourselves for our worthiness. Then on the other side, we've got one day waking up and realizing that inside your car, you actually have an internal self-powering Tesla battery, which actually recharges itself all the time. So now you're actually getting your fuel from inside and you don't actually need the petrol from these gas stations. So you can just actually, on a deeper level, be truly free and autonomous and have your own self-worth derived from within. So you're now driving around, you don't need the petrol. All these other cars that are still reliant on the gas stations are going, where does this guy get his fuel from? He's got some special fuel that we don't know about. I need to be more like him. Teach me, master, And deep down, you know that it's actually an inside job that you're just running on yourself. And you will start to see other people who've also cracked this code that are no longer consistently looking outside for approval and validation and comparing themselves, but they're just good inside. You still have the skills to make a lot of money, to get fit and have success, but you can apply them in a much more healthy and balanced way and also enjoy the other parts of life like family and rest time and purposes and hobbies and passions, as well as still doing your business stuff and getting ripped and making loads of money. So what is the process for shifting this from the external gas station view to the internal Tesla battery? Well, honestly, the reason why I am so passionate about this combination of coaching and breathwork that I do and that we do at Really Align is because this is really the thing that I've found that actually works, that does this, that allows us to switch those systems over. So the way that that works is what we're in theory doing is going back to the core wounds and these early memories and early experiences of feeling that we are not enough. Even though cognitively we could think back and say, yeah, my dad made me feel not good, whatever it was, or my mum didn't accept me, but we can't really change anything about it. And then we're just replaying those same loops and patterns again and again. It's like every time we go on the totem pole, we reignite that same moment from when we were 5 years old. We're living in the past again, projecting it onto the present, and there's nothing we can do about it. So it's all about going back to those early memories and integrating and completing them so that we can actually meet life with openness and fullness instead of consistently living in this, incomplete reflex, basically. So what we do is in these sessions is basically to, first of all, go into the specific flavors of competition and comparison that you're doing in your life. Maybe it's a financial, money, success piece. Maybe it's more in skills and hobbies. But in whatever way you're comparing yourself to others, we get to go deeper into your specific experiences as to what caused you to think and behave in that way. And then afterwards, after the coaching, we then go into the breathwork part, which is when we really go back to the earliest memories and the root of that, and we can actually then feel it and let go of the pain and actually complete that. So we're no longer repeating that in their day to day. So now, for me, freedom is when you can go to the gym and you can see the ripped guy and go, good for him. Actually, I don't really want to put 20 years and loads of steroids in to try to get to that. I feel good as I am. Now you go to the, business conference and you meet the guy who, had the 20 billion company and you go, congratulations. I imagine your internal, drive to be the best and be at the top of the totem pole is even stronger than mine. And I actually feel kind of sorry for you because I know how stressful that can be. And I'm enjoying actually being able to have success and also switch it off. So that's kind of, at least for me, I think that's what true freedom is. So if that sounds appealing and interesting, we do this work in retreats, we do this work in one-on-one setting, and you can even just come to Berlin and basically do a half-day session and just try this out and start to use this as a way to dive deeper into yourself and some of these old comparison patterns that are basically running your life behind the scenes and start to experience what it can be like without having to do that shit anymore, basically. So to conclude this episode, the totem pole power, not a great way to live. Best to stick to the internal Tesla self-powering battery of self-worth. And the only way forward is truly to reclaim your power and to validate yourself from the inside, to recognize that external validation can be fun and great and healthy competition is fine, but it should not be your primary fuel source. I really, from the bottom of my heart to yours, I really hope that you can overcome this and finally reach that place of internal freedom and peace that you actually really deserve to have after so many years of pushing hard to get to this level of success that you've achieved. So time to let that go and be able to choose when you turn it on and realize that everything that you're pushing for on the outside is already there on the inside. Classic. So, ciao from Bali. Have a wonderful day and we'll see you in the next episode.